Have you ever felt it? That immense, silent pressure to forgive someone who isn't sorry? You are told that holding on to anger only hurts you, that to be a good spiritual person, you must forgive and forget. So you try to let it go, but your body remembers, your soul remembers, and a quiet, painful war rages within you between the person you are told you should be and the truth your wounds know. What if that war is based on a lie? What if the wisest, most self-loving, and most courageous thing you can do is to refuse to forgive in the way the world demands? Forgiveness is often presented as the final stage of healing. Sometimes it's a trap. Forcing yourself to offer grace to an unrepentant person is not an act of spiritual maturity. It is a final, devastating act of people-pleasing. It is abandoning your own inner truth one last time for the sake of appearing good. Today, we deconstruct this weaponized virtue. This is a core lesson in the advanced stages of shadow work, a journey into the paradoxical heart of what Carl Jung called psychological integrity. First, we will expose how forgiveness is used as a tool of control, a form of spiritual bypassing. Second, we will make the single most liberating distinction of this entire journey, the difference between internal forgiveness and external reconciliation. And third, I will teach you the art of the final no, a boundary of such calm, quiet finality that it requires no anger, no explanation, and leaves no room for guilt. This is your permission slip to honor your own reality. To begin this radical act of self-loyalty, I invite you to make a commitment to your own well-being. Write in the comments below, "My peace is not negotiable."
But to understand the art of the final no, we must first understand the weapon that is so often used to prevent it, the weapon of forgiveness. In a healthy context, forgiveness is a beautiful, healing act. But in the hands of a manipulator, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a tool of control, a way to bypass responsibility, a way to reset the game board to zero after they have knocked over all your pieces. This is a phenomenon known as spiritual bypassing. It is the act of using spiritual concepts or beliefs to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and difficult psychological work. Just be positive. Everything happens for a reason. And the most powerful of them all, you just need to forgive. Let's imagine Chloe, our nurse. She has finally confronted a family member for a long-standing pattern of hurtful, critical comments. It took all of her courage. She stated her boundary clearly. The family member, feeling exposed and cornered, has an emotional outburst. And then, a day later, they call her. They are not calling to understand the depth of her hurt. They are not calling to discuss how their behavior will change. They are calling to apologize. A quick, clean, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." The old Chloe would have felt a massive wave of relief. The conflict is over. Peace is restored. She would have immediately said, "Of course, I forgive you." And a week later, the critical comments would have started again. The game would have reset. The new Chloe, the one who has been doing this deep shadow work, feels something different. She feels a hesitation, a sense of unease. Her body's wisdom is telling her something is wrong. She is sensing the difference between a manipulative apology and true remorse. A manipulative apology is about the apologizer. Its goal is to alleviate their own discomfort, to end the conversation, to make the problem go away as quickly as possible so they do not have to sit with the consequences of their actions. It is a demand for absolution. True remorse is about the person who was harmed. It is quiet. It is curious. It is patient. It does not demand forgiveness. It seeks to understand the pain it has caused. It is followed not by promises, but by a sustained, observable change in behavior. Manipulators are masters of the manipulative apology, and they will often use your own goodness, your own spiritual beliefs against you. They will quote scripture. They will talk about the toxicity of holding on to anger. They will frame their demand for forgiveness as a test of your spiritual maturity. If you do not forgive them quickly and cleanly, then you are the one who is not enlightened. You are the one who is the problem. This is a profound form of gaslighting. It turns the conversation away from their harmful actions and focuses it on your unforgiving reaction. You are placed in a terrible double bind. Either you betray your own inner truth that says, "This is not safe," or you are cast as the villain, the cold, unspiritual, unforgiving one. For a people pleaser, for an empath like you, this can feel like an impossible choice. It triggers the deepest fear, the fear of being the bad person. Let's be very clear. The anger and resentment you feel after a betrayal are not toxic. They are a healthy, intelligent, life-affirming response. They are your psychic immune system, creating antibodies against further harm. They are the guardians at the gate of your soul, saying, "Never again." To force yourself to let go of that anger before you are ready, before you feel safe, before there has been true change, is an act of psychological violence against yourself. You are telling your guardians to stand down while the intruder is still in the house. You are prioritizing the appearance of goodness over the reality of your own safety. Carl Jung knew that the path to wholeness, the process of individuation, requires a radical honesty. It requires us to look at the shadow, not just the shadows of others, but our own tendency to bypass the truth for the sake of comfort. True spirituality is not found in premature performative forgiveness. It is found in the courageous act of facing the truth of the harm that was done and honoring the sacred protective anger that rises to meet it. The pressure you feel is not from your soul. It is from a culture that fears the righteous power of a clear no. It is from a manipulator who fears the consequences of their own actions. So how do we navigate this? How do we find a path that allows us to release the corrosive burden of resentment without reopening the door to a person who has proven themselves to be unsafe? The secret lies in one of the most liberating and misunderstood distinctions in all of psychology: the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. And once you grasp this difference, the prison of false forgiveness will lose its power over you forever.
But what if I told you that for your entire life, you have been using a single word for two completely different and often opposing actions? This is the key, the master key that unlocks the prison of false forgiveness. We have been taught to use the word forgiveness as a blanket term. But today, we take out the scalpel of clarity and we separate, once and for all, the profound difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Let us begin with forgiveness. True, authentic forgiveness is an internal process. It is a transaction that happens entirely inside of you. It has nothing to do with the other person. It is the personal, private, and often painful work of letting go of the heavy, corrosive burden of resentment. It is the act of releasing your own heart from the prison of bitterness. It is a gift that you give to yourself. Resentment is the poison you drink, hoping the other person will die. Forgiveness is the act of putting down the poison, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to live. You can forgive someone you will never speak to again. You can forgive someone who is no longer alive. You can forgive someone from 1,000 miles away in the quiet of your own room, and they will never have to know. The goal of forgiveness is your internal peace. It is an act of sovereign self-love. Now, let us look at its counterpart, reconciliation. Reconciliation is not an internal process. It is an interpersonal process. It is a transaction that involves two people. It is the act of rebuilding a relationship, of restoring trust, of reopening a door that has been closed. And this is the most important sentence of our entire conversation today. Reconciliation requires the earned trust and demonstrated sustained behavioral change of both parties. Forgiveness can be unilateral. You can give it freely for your own sake. Reconciliation must be bilateral. It must be earned. Let's imagine Chloe again, our nurse. She had a friendship that ended painfully, a friend who betrayed her trust in a significant way. For years, Chloe has been carrying the resentment. It is a heavy stone in her heart. One day, through her shadow work, she decides to practice forgiveness. She is not doing it for her ex-friend. She is doing it for herself. She writes the letter we will discuss later. She weeps, she rages, and then she lets it go. She puts down the poison. She feels a profound sense of peace. She has forgiven. This is a beautiful, complete, internal act. A month later, the ex-friend reaches out. They offer a quick, manipulative apology and say, "Can we just put this behind us? I miss our friendship." The old Chloe would have confused her internal feeling of forgiveness with an external obligation to reconcile. She would have thought, "Well, I've forgiven them, so I guess I have to let them back in." She would have reopened the door. The new Chloe understands the difference. She can feel the peace of forgiveness inside her. And from that place of peace, she can assess the situation with clarity. She asks herself, has this person demonstrated true remorse? Have they taken responsibility? Has their behavior actually changed? The answer is no. So Chloe can make a sovereign choice. She can say, with kindness, but also with firmness, "I appreciate you reaching out. I have made peace with the past in my own heart, and I truly wish you well. But the trust required to rebuild our friendship is no longer there. I am choosing to let it remain in the past." Do you see the power of this? She is not being unforgiving. She has already done the sacred work of forgiveness for her own soul. She is simply refusing to reconcile. She is refusing to step back into a dynamic that has proven itself to be unsafe. This is not a failure of compassion. This is the ultimate success of self-compassion. It is the wisdom of a person who has learned that their peace is more valuable than a false sense of harmony. The cultural pressure to conflate these two concepts is immense.
We are shown movies where a dramatic act of forgiveness instantly heals a broken relationship. We are told stories where reconciliation is the ultimate and only virtuous outcome. This is a dangerous lie. Reconciliation without true, demonstrated change on the part of the person who caused the harm is not healing. It is not grace. It is an invitation for the abuse to happen again. It is you, willingly, handing the knife back to the person who just stabbed you and calling it spirituality. Your forgiveness is yours. It is a treasure. You can give it whenever your soul is ready. Your trust, your presence, your precious life force, these are also treasures. And they are not to be given freely to those who have proven themselves to be unworthy of them. They must be earned. This distinction, this single piece of clarity, is the scalpel that can cut you free from years, even decades of guilt and obligation. It allows you to be a person who is both internally at peace and externally protected. A person with an open heart and a locked door. This is the balance. This is the art. This is the foundation upon which you can finally build the final no.
And so you stand at the door. You have done the internal work of forgiveness. You have put down the poison for your own sake. But the person who harmed you is still standing on your doorstep, asking to be let back in. How do you close the door? Not with a slam of anger, but with the quiet click of a lock turned with love for yourself. This is the art of the final no. The final no is not an argument. It is not a negotiation. It is a conclusion. It is a calm, quiet declaration that this chapter of the story is over. It does not come from a place of hot, reactive rage. It comes from a place of cool, clear, and sometimes sorrowful acceptance. The acceptance that this person, this dynamic, is not healthy for you, and that your primary duty is to your own soul. So, what does it sound like? It is simpler than you think. It is free of justifications, of long explanations, of any attempt to make them understand. It sounds like this. I have come to accept that this relationship is not healthy for me. I truly wish you peace on your journey, but this door is now closed. Or, even more simply, I am no longer willing to participate in this dynamic. This conversation is over. And sometimes the most powerful final no is silence. No response. A block. A deletion. An act that communicates more powerfully than any words that your energy is no longer available for this production. Let's imagine Chloe one last time with that friend who betrayed her, the friend who wants to put it all behind them. Chloe has already forgiven her in her heart, and because she has, she can deliver the final no without bitterness. She can say, I will always cherish the good memories we had, and I have accepted that the trust we once shared is gone. I need to move forward now, and I wish you the very best. There is no room for argument. She is not attacking. She is stating a reality. She has honored the past, and she has protected her future. This is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of profound psychological integrity. But what do you do with the feelings that remain inside you? The grief, the anger, the sadness for what could have been. Saying the final no protects your outer world, but you must still cleanse your inner world. This is where our final and most sacred piece of shadow work comes in. This is a ritual, a private funeral for the relationship that was.
It is the practice of the forgiveness letter you do not send. Find a quiet time, a sacred space where you will not be disturbed. Light a candle. Make a cup of tea. Take a piece of paper and begin to write a letter to the person you are releasing. And in this letter, you hold nothing back. This is the first step, the purge. You write down all the anger, the rage, the hurt, the disappointment, the ugly truths you were never allowed to speak. Do not censor yourself. Do not be nice. Let the ink be your tears and your fire. Fill the page with the raw, uncensored truth of your pain. This is you honoring your wound. When you feel you have nothing left to say, when the rage is spent, move to the second step, the acknowledgement. Write about the good things, if there were any, the lessons you learned, the ways you grew, the moments of joy. Acknowledge that this person, this dynamic, even through their wounding of you, was a teacher. This is not to excuse their behavior, it is to harvest the wisdom from the pain. And then, the final step, the most important step, the release. You write the words of forgiveness, and you write them not for them, you write them for you. You might write this: for the sake of my own peace, for the freedom of my own heart, I choose to release the burden of my resentment toward you. I release you from the debt I thought you owed me. I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, but because I am no longer willing to carry the poison of this story. Read the entire letter out loud to yourself. Let your body hear the words. Let the emotions flow. This is your sacred funeral. And then you take the letter and you destroy it. You can burn it safely in a bowl, watching the smoke carry the old story away, transforming it into light and air. You can tear it into 1,000 tiny pieces and bury it in the earth, returning the energy to the ground. You can release it into a flowing river. The act of destruction is the final, symbolic severing of the energetic cord. You are not erasing the past. You are completing it. You are declaring that its power over your present is finished. This is the art of the final no. The courage to close a door, and the wisdom to cleanse the room of your own heart so that it is ready and spacious for whatever new and beautiful things are waiting to enter.
Today, we have drawn a line in the sand. Not a line of anger, but a line of clarity. We have dismantled the weaponized version of forgiveness, the one used to demand your compliance and bypass responsibility. We have seen it not as a virtue, but as a form of spiritual bypassing, a final, painful act of people-pleasing. And you have been given the master key, the single most liberating distinction in this journey of shadow work, the sacred difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is the internal act of putting down the poison for your own sake. It is a gift you give yourself. Its goal is your peace. Reconciliation is the external act of rebuilding a bridge. It is a gift that requires the earned trust and proven changed behavior of another. Its goal is a healthy relationship. You can have one without the other. You can have a heart full of forgiveness and a door that remains forever locked. This is not a contradiction. This is the mark of a healed and sovereign soul. The practice for this week is a sacred one. It is the ritual of the forgiveness letter you do not send. It is your private, personal ceremony to find the internal peace of forgiveness on your own terms, without ever having to re-engage with the source of the pain. It is how you cleanse your inner world so that the closure you create in your outer world is complete. This is not an easy path. Choosing your safety over the comfort of others will feel selfish at first. It is a direct rebellion against a lifetime of conditioning. But as Carl Jung taught, the process of individuation, of becoming who you truly are, is often a lonely road. It requires you to be more loyal to the quiet truth of your own soul than to the loud demands of the tribe. Your peace is not selfish, it is sacred. Your safety is not an inconvenience, it is your birthright. And a no that is spoken from a place of radical self-love and clear-eyed truth is more holy than a yes whispered from a place of fear and self-abandonment. But as you begin to stand in this new, unshakable power, as you learn to wield the final no with grace and finality, you may discover that the game changes. When the old tactics of guilt and manipulation no longer work, a new and far more confusing counterattack may be launched. What happens when your newfound strength is relabeled as cruelty? What happens when your healthy boundaries are diagnosed as narcissism? What do you do when the person who has been the source of your pain turns to you and accuses you of being the narcissist? Navigating that projection, that ultimate act of gaslighting, requires a new level of discernment. It requires you to have the courage to look in the mirror and the wisdom to know when the reflection you see is not your own. And that is the challenging and essential territory we will map together in our next conversation. For now, your work is one of quiet, courageous closure. To begin the sacred work of forgiving for yourself and releasing for your safety, I invite you to make a final, powerful declaration. Share in the comments below a vow to your own well-being, a promise you make to the deepest part of you. My peace is not negotiable. By writing these words, you are not just typing a comment, you are signing a treaty of peace with your own heart, and you are declaring to the world that the door is closed, not with anger, but with love.